At age 68, I never imagined I'd spend my birthday sleeping on the dirty floor of an abandoned garage that reeked of motor oil, the cruel words of my son echoing in my mind. What would you do with a real inheritance? Dad knew it was useless to you. That night, tears in my eyes and my hand trembling, I turned a rusty key in the lock, unaware that the door concealed my husband's greatest secret. Stay with this story until the very last moment. The ending will astonish you. I never thought that at 68 I'd be sleeping in a deserted garage, surrounded by the smell of oil and decades of dirt. But there I was, shivering in the dark, with a mysterious key in my hands, and my sight blurred by tears as my son's cruel words kept spinning in my mind. "You're nothing but a useless old woman, Mom. What would you do with a real inheritance?" It all began 3 weeks after the burial of Shanton Robert, my husband of 42 years. At Mr. Harrison's law office, I wore the same black dress from the funeral, while Nana James Fan, my son, was impeccable in his custom-tailored suit. The lawyer seemed somewhat nervous as he prepared to read the will. If you're watching this video, please subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached. To my son, James Miller, I leave our penthouse apartment in Chet, Manhattan, and my main investment portfolio. A chill ran down my spine, and then, almost as an afterthought, to my beloved wife, Aunt Susan Miller, I leave the property located at 20 Industrial Avenues and the garage and its contents. A garage. After 42 years of marriage, Robert was leaving me a garage. I was so stunned I couldn't speak, too confused to ask why. I felt James's hand on my shoulder, squeezing far too hard as he leaned in to whisper, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll make sure you're taken care of." I had no idea what those words truly meant. That very evening, upon returning to what I still considered my home, the penthouse overlooking the New York skyline that Robert and I had shared for 15 years, James set my suitcase at the entrance. "I think it would be better if you found somewhere else to stay, Mom. The penthouse is mine now. It's in the will." His voice held that businesslike tone he had perfected over the years, cold, calculating. "Some colleagues are coming tomorrow to discuss renovating Dad's office, and I need to start making changes." "But where will I go?" My voice came out small, almost a whisper. James shrugged with indifferent cruelty. "You can stay with Aunt Sarah for a while, or you always have that garage Dad left you." His laugh cut me like a knife. "Why he left you that junk is a mystery to me." "What are you going to do with it? Open a mechanic shop at your age?" I felt something break inside me. I tried to tell him I needed time, that I couldn't just leave that night. It was then that he spoke the words that would scar my soul. "You're nothing but a useless old woman, Mom. What would you do with a real inheritance? Dad knew it was useless to you." The cruelty was so unexpected, so unlike the son I thought I had raised, that I was left speechless. I simply grabbed my suitcase, my purse, and the key Mr. Harrison had given me after the reading, and I left. I truly wonder if you were in my place. What would you do? Would you choose to be quiet to maintain peace, or would you dare to face everything to reclaim your voice? I want to know your opinion, because every story is like a candle that can light the way for someone else. I drove aimlessly through the city, tears blurring my vision. How had we come to this? How had I failed to see what my son had become? The questions spun in my head until I finally arrived at an unfamiliar street in the industrial district, looking at a neglected garage with a padlock on the door. My hand trembled as I inserted the key into the rusty lock. The door creaked as it opened, and the beam of my flashlight cut through the decades of accumulated darkness. And then I froze. The interior was not filled with junk or old tools as I had expected. The space before me held 3 carefully sheeted vehicles. But what stopped my heart was the unmistakable silver grille I glimpsed, that of what appeared to be a vintage Aston Martin. With trembling fingers, I pulled the sheet off the first car, revealing a pristine silver 964 DB5 chin, identical to the one Sean Connery drove in the James Bond movies Robert loved so much. The car gleamed as if it had just left the factory, not as if it had been forgotten in this dark garage for years. "Robert," I whispered into the silence, "what were you doing?" In 42 years of marriage, my husband had never mentioned collecting cars. There had never been a hint of this passion, this investment, this secret life. The second vehicle was a 1956 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing, with its easily recognizable gull wing doors and elegant lines, even to my non-expert eyes. And the third, a 1967 Ferrari Tucson GTB4. Its intense red reminded me of the wine Robert ordered on our anniversaries. Each car had a leather folder with documents, ownership papers, and maintenance records. Although I wasn't an expert, I knew these weren't just nice cars. They were museum treasures worth I couldn't even imagine. Tell me whether you have parents, grandparents, or older family members who deserve more respect than they currently receive from their families. Alternatively, tell me if you yourself are going through a situation in which you're not appreciated as much as you truly deserve. It was then that I saw an envelope taped to the wall with my name in Robert's unmistakable handwriting. Next to it was a light switch, which, when flipped, showed that this was no ordinary garage. The space was professionally equipped with climate control systems, specialized flooring, and security. It wasn't an abandoned building, but a meticulously planned car sanctuary. I sat down on a leather armchair I found near a wall, the heavy envelope in my hands. With a racing heart, I opened it and began to read. My dearest Susan, if you are reading this, it means I'm gone, and you have discovered what I have come to consider my final gift to you. Robert's first words made my hand shake. I took a deep breath and continued. First, I must tell you how sorry I am for the shock and confusion you must be feeling now. The secrecy was not to hurt you, but to protect what I was building for your future. A tear rolled down my face. Robert had always taken care of me, but I never imagined to what extent. 6 years ago, when I received the diagnosis, the doctors gave me a maximum of 5 years. I beat them by 1, but I knew our time together was limited, and I needed to ensure you would be well after I left. I stopped reading, trying not to sob. The diagnosis of progressive heart failure had been terrible, but Robert had always downplayed it, saying we had plenty of time. I never imagined he had been planning his farewell from the start. I know you're wondering about the will, about why I left our home to James instead of to you. Believe me, that decision caused me more sleepless nights than my health. My hands trembled so much I had to put the letter down for a moment. Over the last decade, I watched our son change. The ambitious boy we raised became something different, something harder and more calculating than I would have liked. The truth is, I was afraid of what would happen to you if I left everything to both of you, or even if I divided things equally. James would have found a way to control the assets, to manage your portion for your benefits, as he would say. A tear fell onto the paper, slightly blurring the ink. I saw how he speaks to you when he thinks I'm not listening, how he dismisses your opinions and needs. I hadn't realized Robert had noticed those things. I'd always excused James's dismissive behavior, telling myself he was just busy, stressed with his job. So I made this divided inheritance deliberately. James received what he will see as the valuable part. Yes, the penthouse, the visible investments, the status symbols. But what you are looking at now, my love, is the true wealth. Just these 3 cars are worth around $12 million. $12 million. I looked at the 3 silent machines, their shiny surfaces reflecting the ceiling lights. This couldn't be true. The documents will confirm they are originals, and you will find the contact information for Senator Charles Del Toro, my trusted dealer and advisor for these purchases. He can help you with whatever you decide to do with them. I kept reading, each word revealing more of Robert's well-thought-out plan. But the cars are only the beginning. In the safe behind our photo from Charleston, and the key is our anniversary, you will find the documents for several investment properties I purchased over the last 6 years, all placed in a trust that transfers to your name upon my death. You will also find information for bank accounts that will give you a comfortable life for the rest of your life. I rose unsteadily and walked to the framed photo on the wall. Robert and I laughing on a street corner while a street musician serenaded us on our 35th wedding anniversary trip. The safe opened with a soft click when I entered our anniversary date. Inside, I found a thick folder and several marked USB drives. The main document was titled Complete inventory of assets for Susan Miller. I opened it and immediately had to sit down again. As the columns of numbers and property descriptions swam before my eyes, apartment buildings in Chicago, a commercial property in Dallas, a small vineyard in the Guam, California wine country, stock portfolios, bonds, investments. The total value at the bottom of the page took my breath away. I returned to the letter, my hands trembling. I know this is overwhelming, and I am deeply sorry for keeping it secret. Initially, it was just a project to distract myself from my anxiety about the future, but as the portfolio grew, I realized that revealing it prematurely could put you in danger if James learned the full extent of these assets. Robert had known. He had anticipated exactly what would happen. He had foreseen how James would react. I have always believed that character is most clearly revealed in moments of inheritance. James is receiving a test as much as an inheritance, and you, my love, are receiving the means to live the rest of your life exactly as you choose, owing nothing to anyone. All my love, now and forever. Robert. I hugged the letter, tears flowing uncontrollably. After 42 years of marriage, I thought I knew everything about my husband. Instead, it seemed I was just now discovering the depth of his love and foresight. The irony was not lost on me. Just hours earlier, my son had thrown me out of what he thought was my home, calling me a useless old woman, while believing he had secured the valuable inheritance. How wrong he was about everything. I spent that first night on a leather sofa I discovered in a small adjoining office. By morning, I realized how thoroughly Robert had planned everything. The office had a small bathroom with a shower, a mini fridge stocked with water and basic food, and even a small closet with several changes of clothes in my size, tags still attached. The daylight showed that the garage was not an abandoned space, but a carefully renovated facility. The neglected exterior was an intentional deception, hiding the treasures within. After a simple breakfast, I called the number for Charles Del Toro that Robert had included in his letter. He answered on the second ring. Mrs. Miller, I was expecting your call. First, please accept my condolences on your loss. Robert was not just a client, but a friend. 2 hours later, an elegant man in his late 60s arrived. Charles Del Toro looked exactly as his voice sounded, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a tweed jacket with leather elbow patches. Your husband began acquiring these vehicles about 6 years ago, he explained. He was very methodical. Each purchase was thoroughly vetted for authenticity, provenance, and investment potential. But why cars? I asked, still trying to connect this passion with the husband I thought I knew completely. Charles smiled kindly. He explained it to me once. He said cars were tangible assets, beautiful, and brought joy just by looking at them. Unlike stocks or bonds, they could be appreciated in many ways. As art, as engineering marvels, as historical objects, and as investments. He wanted to leave you something you could see and touch, not just numbers on a paper. A lump formed in my throat hearing Robert's reasoning. It was so typical of him, practical yet deeply thoughtful. The collection is now valued at approximately $12 million. As Robert indicated in his letter, Charles continued, but its value has been consistently appreciating. These models in particular are considered among the world's best collector car investments. And what should I do with them? I asked. Whatever you wish, Mrs. Miller. You can sell them individually or as a collection. You can keep them as an investment, or you can even drive them. Although that will slightly impact their value, there is no rush to decide. Robert paid for secure storage and maintenance for the next 5 years. I spent the following days reviewing the documents Robert had left, slowly grasping the magnitude of his secret financial maneuvers. Besides the cars, he had built an impressive collection of income-generating properties and investments, all structured to transfer seamlessly to me upon his death. One document, in particular, caught my attention, the deed to a modest but charming house in Key West, Florida, a seaside town we had visited several times over the years and always loved. According to the papers, Robert had bought it 4 years ago, fully furnished and move-in ready. I had a home, a real home, not just this garage, no matter how valuable its contents were. As night fell, my phone rang with James's number on the screen. I hesitated but answered. Mom, where are you? His voice held annoyance rather than concern. Aunt Sarah says you haven't contacted her. I'm fine, James, I replied, keeping my voice steady. I found a place to stay. Good. I need you to come collect the rest of your things from the penthouse. The decorators are starting tomorrow and they need everything out. Not an apology, not a word about his cruelty, just more demands and disrespect. I understand, I said. A strange calm washed over me. And when would be convenient for you? Tomorrow morning before 9 o'clock a.m. I have meetings all day. I thought of the document spread before me, the proof of Robert's profound love and care. I thought of the son who could dismiss his mother without a second thought because she was an inconvenience, and I made a decision. I'll be there, I said. The next day, I arrived at the penthouse at exactly 8:45 a.m., mindful of my appearance. I wore one of the new outfits from the garage closet, a simple but elegant navy pantsuit that fit me well. James opened the door, phone in hand. He barely glanced at me as I entered. The place already felt different, emptier, colder. Several of my decorative items were missing, and the family photos that used to line the hallway had been removed. Finally, he said, I've packed most of your personal belongings. The decorators will be here at 9:30, so we need to be quick. Not a good morning, not a question about where I had spent the night after he had kicked me out of my home, just the urgency of his own schedule. Good morning to you too, James, I replied, my voice firmer than I expected. I see you've already started decorating. He shrugged, ushering me toward the master bedroom where several boxes were stacked. No point waiting. The place needs a complete renovation to increase its value. Increase its value, I repeated. I plan to sell it eventually, he said. It's too big for one person and the market is good right now. I think I'll renovate, enjoy it for a year or so, and then sell it for a significant profit. The casual disregard for the home Robert and I had built together stung, but I only nodded. I see, and Robert's things? James vaguely gestured toward the more boxes in the corner. I kept his Rolex and the cufflink collection. The rest is just clothes and old stuff. You can take what you want. The rest I'll donate to charity. Old stuff, I repeated softly, walking toward the boxes. Inside the first one, I found Robert's beloved books, his collection of antique fountain pens, the sweater I had given him last Christmas, which still smelled like him. Each item was a piece of the man I had loved, now deemed worthless by our son. I began to go through the boxes carefully, separating the things that were valuable to me while James paced impatiently, checking his watch every few minutes. Can't you hurry up? He finally snapped. It's just things, Mom. You don't even have anywhere to put all this. I looked at him, truly seeing the man my son had become. Handsome like his father, but lacking Robert's warmth or compassion in his eyes. I do have a place, I said calmly. And I will take the time I need. These are not just things, James. They are memories. He rolled his eyes. Fine, I have calls to make. Just finish up by 9:30. He left without looking back. As I continued to carefully select the items, I found myself going through stages of grief, not just for Robert, but for the son I thought I had raised. Had he always been this cold, this rude? I had simply refused to see it, making excuses for his increasingly insensitive behavior. Robert had seen clearly, so clearly that he devised an elaborate plan to protect me from our own son. At the back of a closet, I found something unexpected, Robert's old leather backpack shoved into a corner. Inside was a sealed envelope addressed to me and a note. If you find this, Susan, it's an extra copy of everything in the garage safe, just in case. My husband's so clever and cautious, backing up his backups. When the doorman helped me load my belongings into my car, I looked up at the building one last time. I felt a strange mixture of sadness and freedom. The penthouse had been our home, filled with memories, but it had never truly been mine, in the way Robert had intended the garage, and what was within it to be. I drove out of the city and onto the coastal highway, heading towards Key West. It was time to see the home Robert had prepared for me, the true inheritance he had planned all along. As I drove, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time since Robert's death, I was not merely reacting to loss and shock. I was purposefully driving towards something new. The drive to Key West calmed something in my soul that had been broken since Robert's death. As the road wound along the cliffs, offering views of the vast blue Atlantic Ocean, I felt myself breathing deeper than I had in weeks. I followed the directions to a modest stone house, half hidden behind large cypress trees. The property wasn't huge or ostentatious, but it felt cozy and private. A wooden gate led to a path that circled a small, well-tended garden. With the key from the document package, I opened the front door and stepped inside. The interior made me stop dead in my tracks. Every detail seemed to have been chosen with me in mind. The living room had built-in bookshelves around a stone fireplace, with comfortable armchairs in the colors and styles I always loved. Natural light poured in through large windows, illuminating wooden floors covered with handcrafted rugs. The kitchen was modern yet classic, with a breakfast nook overlooking the garden. The master bedroom was cozy rather than grand, but it opened onto a private patio with a sliver of an ocean view between the neighboring properties. But it was the small office off the living room that finally broke me. There, above a simple desk, hung a painting I instantly recognized, a watercolor of the Venice Canal where Robert had proposed, painted by a street artist decades ago. We had lost the original in a move years ago, but here was a perfect replica, as if Robert had commissioned it from my memory. The tears came then, not the desperate sobs of the last weeks, but a softer release. Robert had created this place for me with so much care, so much attention to the things that would bring me comfort and joy. A soft knock on the door pulled me from my trance. Opening it, I found an elegant woman in her late 70s holding a covered plate. "Hello," she said warmly. "You must be Susan. I'm Marianne Carter, your neighbor. Robert asked me to look out for you when you arrived." I blinked in surprise. "You knew Robert?" She nodded, offering me the plate. "He came several times over the last few years getting the house ready. I'm one of the few people who knew about his plan. He made me promise not to contact you until you came to claim the place." Over tea in the kitchen, Marianne shared details that filled more gaps in my understanding. "Robert was so meticulous about getting everything right," she explained. "He brought pictures of your city home, trying to capture your style while creating something that fit here in Key West." "I had no idea he was doing any of this," I admitted. "He kept it completely secret." Marianne nodded thoughtfully. "He mentioned that. He said it was for your protection, though he didn't elaborate." She looked at me with direct kindness. "He said that when you finally came, you might need a friend, someone who understood what it was like to rebuild a life after loss." In the following days, I settled into a quiet routine, exploring the town, meeting other neighbors, returning each evening to the house that felt more and more like my own. On the fourth day, my phone rang with James's number. I hesitated before answering. "Mama, where are you?" His voice carried that familiar note of impatience. "Aunt Sarah says you're not staying with her." "I'm taking some time for myself, James," I replied. "I found a place to stay." "What does that mean? What place? You can't just disappear like that." "I'm not discussing my current location. Was there something specific you needed?" A pause. Then his voice shifted back to his business tone. "Actually, yes, I've been reviewing Dad's papers more closely, and I've found some references to additional investments that weren't in the will. I believe there might be accounts or properties we don't know about yet." My heart hammered faster, but I kept my voice firm. "Oh, what kind of references?" "Nothing specific, just notes about meetings with financial advisors I don't recognize. Some cryptic comments about securing future assets." James was suspicious, searching for assets he believed were rightfully his. How long would it be before he discovered the truth? "If there were additional assets, I'm sure Mr. Harrison would have mentioned them," I countered. "Perhaps," Denemes said, unconvinced. "Look, when are you coming back to the city? Should we discuss this in person?" "I'm not sure when I'll be back," I replied. "I need this time away." His frustration was palpable even through the phone. "Mom, this is ridiculous. You can't just run off to who knows where." "I'm perfectly fine, James. I am not running off, and I am not alone. I am simply taking time to process everything that has happened." After hanging up, I sat in the garden to think. The question Robert had posed in his letter kept turning over in my mind. Would James prove himself worthy of sharing in this unexpected wealth? So far, his actions had only confirmed Robert's concerns about his character. But people can change, can't they? The son I remembered from years ago, the one with genuine warmth and compassion, was still in there somewhere. Then, 3 months later, I'd settled into the routine that felt increasingly natural. I divided my time between tending to the house, exploring my new community, and managing the responsibilities that came with Robert's unexpected legacy. With the help of my lawyer, Patricia Adams, I had established a comfortable system for overseeing the properties and investment. The cars remained in their secure garage, maintained by Charles Del Toro's team. I even drove the Aston Martin once, a slightly terrifying trip down the coastal road that left me exhilarated and strangely closer to Robert. James and I had a strained relationship. We communicated mainly through formal emails about practical matters. As Patricia had predicted, his initial legal inquiries to contest the inheritance fizzled out after lawyers confirmed Robert's arrangements were airtight. I was pruning roses in the garden when an unfamiliar car pulled up. A tall, professional-looking woman emerged with the efficient air of someone accustomed to handling end problems. "Mrs. Miller, I'm Clara Benson, James's assistant. May I speak with you for a moment?" Something about her manner, tense and urgent beneath the professional veneer, gave me a chill of concern. In the living room, Clara sat on the edge of the sofa, declining my offer of tea. "Mrs. Miller, I'm here because James is facing some serious issues." She opened a thin folder. "The penthouse renovation costs have exceeded budget by nearly double. There were unforeseen structural issues that required significant additional investment." I wasn't surprised. Robert had mentioned the building's aging infrastructure years ago, though his suggestions for maintenance had been dismissed as unnecessary expenses. Simultaneously, Clara continued, James's main investment has failed. He poured a great deal of capital into a development project that ran into intractable permitting problems. The details are complex, but essentially he is facing serious losses with very little liquid capital. I see, but I kept my face impassive. And how does that involve me? Clara shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. Miller, to be frank, James needs financial assistance. He knows you have the resources that could help him avoid bankruptcy and the loss of the penthouse." There it was, the request I had anticipated since our fight 3 months ago. Not an apology, not an attempt to reconcile, but a demand for money delivered by an intermediary to avoid the embarrassment of asking directly. "Has James considered selling the penthouse?" I asked. "Even half renovated, it would likely cover his debts." "He explored that option," Clara admitted. "Unfortunately, in its current mid-renovation state, the property would sell at a significant loss. Furthermore, there are complications with some of the contractors." In other words, James had likely alienated the construction crew through his manner or failure to pay them. "I appreciate you coming to explain the situation," I said after a moment. "Please tell James that I have heard his request and I will consider it." Clara looked surprised by my noncommittal answer. "Mrs. Miller, the situation is quite urgent. Foreclosure proceedings could begin within weeks." "I understand, and I will need time to formulate my response. That is all I can offer today." The next morning, instead of calling James immediately, I drove back to the city to view the penthouse situation for myself. The doorman, recognizing me from my years living there, let me up without announcing me first. What I found was dire. The once elegant home had been almost entirely gutted in most areas, with exposed wiring and plumbing creating a hazardous maze. The construction site was abandoned, a fine layer of dust suggesting weeks had passed since any work had been done. As I walked through what had been our home, I felt a mixture of emotions: sadness at the destruction of spaces that held so many memories, frustration at the waste and mismanagement, and gratitude for Robert's foresight in protecting me. I was examining some water damage when I heard the front door open. "Mom," James's voice echoed in the empty space. "The doorman said you were here." He appeared in the doorway, and I was startled by how different he looked. His appearance, usually immaculate, was neglected. His clothes were still expensive but looked rumpled, his face showing the strain of sleepless nights. He had lost weight, the angles of his face highlighting how much he resembled Robert during his most challenging moments. "I wanted to see it for myself," I explained, gesturing at the destruction around us. James ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I recognized from his childhood. I assume Clara spoke to you yesterday. I nodded. She explained your financial predicament. I needed to understand the full situation before making a decision. I walked carefully around a pile of discarded debris. This is quite different from what you described when you began the renovations. He laughed, a short, humorless sound. Yes, well, things rarely go as planned in construction or in life. James, I said gently, what happened with the investment project? Something in my tone must have broken through his guard. He sat on an overturned bucket, looking utterly defeated. I got in over my head. The development opportunity seemed solid. Luxury condos in a prime area. Pre-construction sales were already strong. I put in not only the cash I had, but borrowed heavily against other assets, including the future value I thought the penthouse would hold. And then an environmental inspection uncovered undisclosed contamination issues. The cleanup costs made the project unviable. The investors pulled out. I looked around at the destruction surrounding us, both the physical demolition and the wreckage of James's financial stability. Why didn't you come to me sooner, before things reached this point? His face hardened. After our last conversation, after finding out what Dad did and your part in it, I suppose it was pride or stubbornness. The Miller family traits both are powerful motivators, I conceded. So, James said after a moment, trying to sound casual, have you made your decision about helping me? I looked him directly in the eye. I am willing to help, James, but not without conditions, and not just by writing you a check to pay off your debts. Relief and exhaustion battled on his face. What conditions? We need to discuss this properly, I replied, walking toward the door. Not here, surrounded by the evidence of careless decisions. Come to Key West tomorrow. We will talk about a path forward that addresses not only your immediate problem, but also the things that caused it. He looked like he wanted to argue, to press for an immediate decision, but need overcame pride. Fine. Tomorrow. James arrived at the house precisely at the agreed-upon time. 11 o'clock a.m. the next morning, his appearance notably more polished than the day before, an attempt, I surmised, to project a control he no longer possessed. I had spent the morning preparing, not just mentally but physically, carefully arranging the setting for our conversation. You have a beautiful view, he commented stiffly as I led him to the back patio, where I had set up comfortable chairs and a light lunch. Your father chose well, I agreed. He remembered how much I love the coast. James's face contorted slightly at the mention of Robert, but he said nothing as he sat down. The patio overlooked a small, meticulously kept garden that sloped gently, offering glimpses of the Atlantic between the neighboring properties. The atmosphere was tranquil, private, and neutral for the difficult conversation ahead. After pouring us both iced tea, I turned to face my son directly. Before we discuss your financial situation, I'd like to show you something. I handed him a leather folder I had prepared that morning with select documents from Robert's files. These are financial projections and maintenance assessments for the penthouse, I explained as he flipped through the pages. Your father had them commissioned 3 years ago, anticipating major failures in the building systems. The estimates align closely with what you encountered in your renovations. James frowned. Dad never mentioned any of this. He tried, I corrected gently, and several times. You dismissed his concerns as him being overly cautious, as unnecessary expenditures. He showed you these reports during his last Christmas visit, before his diagnosis. A flash of recognition crossed his face. The bothersome building assessment he kept mentioning at dinner, yes. I took a sip of my tea. Robert wasn't just being cautious. He was trying to prepare you for the very situation you are now facing. James pushed the folder aside. His jaw tightened. If you brought me all the way here just to say, Dad told you so. No, I interrupted. I am setting the context for my decision to help you. Robert saw this coming. Not just the building problems, but the pattern of decisions that led to your current crisis. And what pattern is that? His tone was defensive, but I sensed genuine confusion beneath it. prioritizing appearance over substance, I said simply, seeking impressive gains over stable growth, dismissing caution as meaningless pessimism. I looked him straight in the eye. The very qualities that led you to throw your mother out of the house rather than factor her needs into your plans. He had the decency to look ashamed for a moment. I shouldn't have handled that way. No, you shouldn't have. I agreed. A silence settled between us, broken only by the distant sound of the waves and the occasional cry of the seabirds. James shifted, unaccustomed to me being so direct. Throughout his adult life, I had been the peacemaker, the smoother of ruffled feathers, the one who accommodated his moods. So, what do you propose? And then he finally asked, "What are these conditions for your help?" "First, complete transparency," I replied. "I need to see everything, all accounts, debts, contracts, commitments, nothing hidden, nothing conveniently left unsaid." He nodded stiffly. "Fine. What else?" "Professional financial oversight going forward," I continued. "You have demonstrated that your judgment in these matters is affected by impulsivity and overconfidence. Any money I provide will be managed through a trust with appropriate supervision." His face darkened. "So I'll be put on an allowance like a child? Like someone who has made serious financial mistakes and needs protected rehabilitation?" "It is not a punishment, James," I corrected. "It is to protect the money and to protect you. And I suppose you'll control those funds." "None," I said, surprising him. "Independent administrators with legal accountability. I have no interest in controlling your life, only in ensuring that the help I provide actually leads to long-term improvement." He processed that, clearly wrestling between his desperate need for help and his resistance to losing autonomy. "And the penthouse, it's still mine? The most practical solution would be to sell it," I said, watching his reaction. "Even in its current state, and it would cover a significant portion of your debts. You could start fresh, perhaps in a property that is easier to manage." "Sell it?" The idea seemed genuinely to shock him. "But it's our family home. It's where Dad and you—" "It is a physical location, James," I gently interrupted. "One you were eager to rip apart and change only a few months ago. The memories are not in the walls." He stood abruptly, pacing the small patio. "You don't understand. Selling it would be admitting total failure. Everyone would know." And there it was, the crux of his resistance. Not emotional attachment to our family home, but concern about what people would think of a financial distress sale. Appearance over substance, once again. "People already know," I said calmly. "Construction stopped months ago. Contractors have filed liens for non-payment. The financial community talks about these matters." He stopped pacing, his shoulders slumped. I really screwed up everything, didn't I? The vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. For the first time since Robert's death, I saw my son behind his defenses, confused and finally facing the consequences of years of prioritizing appearance. "Not everything," I said, my voice softening, "but you created a serious problem that will require equally serious changes to fix." James sat back down in the chair, looking suddenly exhausted. "So, what exactly are you offering me?" "A structured path forward," I replied. "I will establish a fund that will pay off your most urgent debts and prevent bankruptcy. We will hire professionals to either finish the essential renovations or prepare the penthouse for sale, depending on what makes the most sense after evaluation. And in return, you accept financial oversight for a defined period. You work with a counselor on the underlying issues that led to this situation, and—" I paused, then I continued firmly. "You make amends for how you treated me after your father died." His eyes met mine. "Make amends? What exactly does that mean?" "It means acknowledging the harm you did. It means understanding that relationships have consequences, just like financial decisions." I leaned forward slightly. "James, I'm not offering you help purely as a business transaction. I'm offering it as a mother who believes her son can be better than his recent behavior suggests." Something in my words seemed to break the barrier he had maintained. He looked away, blinking rapidly. "I didn't mean what I said that day," he said softly, "about you being useless. I was angry and I lashed out." "Perhaps," I conceded, "but those words did not come from nowhere. They reflected an attitude toward me, toward older women in general, that you have held for some time." He didn't deny it, which was a small step forward. I need time to think about all of this, he said finally. Take the time you need, I responded, but remember that your creditor's deadlines will not adjust to your schedule of contemplation. Spring returned to Key West, painting the garden of the house with bursts of color against the blue backdrop of the Atlantic. 9 months had passed since Robert's death, 6 since I discovered the contents of the garage, and 4 since James's financial crisis had forced our conversation. After 3 days of silence, James had called with an answer that surprised me. I'll do whatever it takes. The path since that acceptance had not been easy. The financial restructuring required weeks of intense work with accountants and lawyers, revealing the full extent of James's financial entanglements, some far worse than he had initially disclosed. The penthouse required difficult decisions, culminating in an agreement to complete the essential renovations for sale, and then to sell it to cover the most urgent debts. More difficult than these practicalities was the personal work James agreed to undertake. Weekly sessions with a therapist, initially approached with skepticism, gradually became a source of genuine insight. Our relationship entered new territory, one neither of us navigated perfectly, but with increasing honesty on both sides. I was tending the roses when a familiar car pulled up. James emerged carrying a small package, his demeanor visibly different from his former self, both the slick executive and the desperate man facing ruin. His clothes were still high quality but less ostentatious, his posture more relaxed. He had even grown a short beard that softened the angles of his face, making him look strikingly like Robert when he was younger. "The garden looks incredible," he commented, greeting me with a kiss on the cheek, a gesture that felt deeply sincere. "You've really transformed this place." "Just working with what your father started," I replied, setting aside my tools. As we sat down for what had become our routine monthly visit, I noted the tranquility that had replaced his former tension. "The penthouse sale closes next week," he told me. "The final inspection went well. We're going to realize about 40% more than the fire sale estimates." "That's excellent news," I said. "That will give the fund more options for your next steps." "About those next steps," James carefully set down his mug, "I wanted to tell you about something. I've been offered a position at a community development organization that focuses on affordable housing projects." I raised my eyebrows, unable to hide my surprise. James's career had always been in high-end commercial real estate, with frequent disdain for anything related to accessible housing. "It's a much lower salary than my previous positions, obviously," he continued. "But the fund you set up means my basic expenses are covered, and—" He paused, searching for the words. "It feels like meaningful work, using what I know about development for something other than just profit." "That sounds like a significant shift," I said. "What motivated it?" James looked out at the ocean before answering. "Remember that failed luxury condo project? The site was sold to a nonprofit housing firm. They're now building beautifully designed, environmentally sound, mixed-income housing there. I was helping them informally for a few months, and—" He shrugged, a gesture of both embarrassment and pride. "It turns out I'm good at the technical aspects of development without the pressure to maximize every penny." I studied my son's face, noting the genuine excitement as he described the project. "It seems you found something that engages more than just your business acumen." "Dad would probably find it ironic," James admitted with a genuine smile, "that I ended up working in affordable housing after years of chasing luxury markets." "I think he would be pleased," I corrected gently. "He always admired skill used for valuable ends." James nodded. Then he picked up the package he had brought. "Speaking of Dad, that's partly why I brought this. We found a few things during the final cleanup of the penthouse that I thought you should have." Inside the package was a small wooden box I instantly recognized. Robert's collection of cufflinks and tie bars, the items James had kept for himself initially. "I kept them thinking they represented a connection to Dad," James explained, watching as I opened the box. "But I realized recently they were just things. The real connection to him isn't in possessions." Beneath the cufflinks was something else, a small velvet pouch holding my original wedding ring, the one I thought had been lost during the chaos of the penthouse. I found it in Dad's office safe, James said as I slipped the gold band from the pouch. Along with it, he handed me a small envelope with my name written in Robert's script. Inside was a card for our 45th anniversary. The first ring was a promise of the life we would build. This one celebrates the life we created. All my love forever. Tucked inside the car was a jeweler's receipt for an eternity band, dated only weeks before Robert's final hospitalization, a gift he didn't live to give. He was planning ahead even then, I said softly, tears blurring my vision, always thinking of future moments. The jeweler still had the order, James said. I picked it up for you. He pulled a small box from his pocket and handed it to me. Inside was a delicate band of sapphires and diamonds. Simple, elegant, exactly my style. The stones caught the spring sunlight, sending dancing prisms across the patio table. Oh, Robert, I whispered, sliding the ring onto my finger next to my original wedding band. They looked perfect together, the simple gold of the beginning, the circle of gems for a journey completed. James watched in silence, allowing me this moment of connection with his father. When I finally looked at him, I saw something in his face I hadn't seen in years, a softness, a respect that felt unhurried. As he prepared to leave, James paused at the garden gate. I wanted to ask, what happened with those cars, the ones in the garage Dad left you? I smiled, recalling my recent conversation with Charles. I'm keeping the Aston Martin. Robert would love knowing I drive it on the coast sometimes. The others are being sold, and the money is being split between a foundation supporting financial literacy and a trust fund for your future children, if you have them. The future children, James repeated thoughtfully. That's optimistic. Your father was always an optimist at heart, I replied. Beneath his practical plans was a belief that people can grow and be better versions of themselves if given the right opportunity. That evening, I drove the Aston Martin down the coastal road, the powerful engine purring as I navigated curves Robert never saw me take. The sunset turned the ocean into liquid gold as my hands, adorned with the simple ring of the start and the jeweled circle of the conclusion, guided the wheel with growing confidence. You were right, I said aloud to Robert's memory, my voice carried away by the wind. Right about so much. The useless garage, which once represented my son's contempt for my worth, had not only changed my life, but our relationship as well. The inheritance that seemed so cruelly unjust proved to be Robert's final act of wisdom and love for us both. As I drove home, my home, I felt a sense of closure, one cycle ending and a new one beginning. No matter what the future held, I would face it with the security of Robert's plans, the lessons of this challenging year held within me, and the self-worth I gained guiding me. The garage key, which once merely unlocked a physical door, had ultimately unlocked something far more valuable, a new understanding of love, legacy, and the courage to start anew, regardless of age or circumstances. The names and places in this story have been changed to protect the identities of those involved. We do not share this to judge, but in the hope that someone will pause and reflect on how many mothers are silently suffering within their own homes. I truly wonder, if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose silence to preserve peace, or would you dare to confront everything in order to reclaim your voice? I long to hear your thoughts because every story is like a candle that can light the path for someone else. I firmly believe that God always blesses and that courage leads us toward brighter days. As we close, I leave you with two of the channel's most beloved stories. I'm certain they will surprise and inspire you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.